name is Daniel K. Isaac. I use he, him pronouns. I'm 35 years old. I was born in Los Angeles, California. My earliest childhood memory, my biological parents first raised me in a house in Fullerton, California, Orange County. I think I remember being on our back porch or patio-esque thing and seeing fireworks. So that's an early memory. And my parents split up before I was 3. So to have those memories feels almost unreal. The divorce must have finalized around 2 or 3. And one of my other early childhood memories would be moving from Fullerton to Los Angeles in Koreatown, pre-gentrification. That's a weird memory that I do know the sensation of boxes, hating moving, hating that I recognized the space was smaller than the house, or that we were in a shared apartment complex versus a house in suburbia. From then on, I would only see my dad on Sundays because my mom would go to church where he attended, and I'd see him in passing. It's not like we spent any significant time together. And what I would later learn is that he cheated on my mom with the head pastor's daughter of this church. They ended up together. So my mom continued to go to the church where she was made a fool or cuckolded or whatever the term is, where this guy cheated on her, and she still went so that I could have some contact with him, which blows my mind to this day, until around 5th grade, where she finally left that church for somewhere else. After my parents separated, it was my mom and I for most of my life. She said she remarried, so we moved from LA to Diamond Bar with this guy. Later I would learn she never married that guy, but because she was raising me uber Christian, she didn't want it to look like she was cohabitating with a man outside of marriage. And she claims that because he was Canadian, he wanted her citizenship, which also my biological father used her for citizenship, or is one of her interpretations. I'll never get another side of the story, probably, so I can only take what she says, but I take it all with a grain of salt. After they separated, it didn't last very long. I would get taken care of by this white family, the Bishops, that I was in Boy Scouts with, and I would call them mom and dad, and I would call them my foster family, even though we never did the official paperwork. I just know they went out of their way to take care of me and, my mom, but really me. So then I distinguish between my biological father, that brief moment of a stepfather who really wasn't even, I learned later, and then this white family, the Bishops, that I'm still sort of in touch with. When I was in Boy Scouts, I was in junior high and early high school. The Boy Scouts meetings took place in a church, and a lot of it is built to be father-son. And because I had a single mom, and because I think I was one of the few Boy Scouts who I think came from a divorced family, this family in particular kind of went out of their way to take care of me and took me in. And I know that relieved financial pressure off my mom. It relieved time and parental duties. And so I do credit them as this other family, even though they too would end up being very, or at least become very religious. And what I later learned was my foster family didn't think I should leave for college or leave home for college because I graduated high school at 16. They thought I would lose my faith if I went away to San Diego, which was only 2 hours, less than 2 hours from Orange County, really. They were right. But also, my mom stood up for me and said, well, he wants to go to this college, so he should get to go. Again, I was stubborn, and at 16, I knew I would learn my foster family didn't want me to go. I did a terrible thing to myself in high school where I put myself into conversion therapy in a religious setting to name my sexuality as a sin and to actively fight it and to believe that I was given this sin or this obstacle or struggle in life. I had to ask for forgiveness and repent and overcome it. And so I put myself into conversion therapy before I even came out to my mom. This main conversion therapist, Rich Manley, he didn't demand, he strongly encouraged with my therapy for me to rescind all my college applications that were not in California. He didn't want me to leave my support network because a lot of my therapy was support based, and it was a lot of accountability partners and youth pastors and people who were there for me in this struggle, this journey. And I took his advice, and it is one of my few regrets in life is I listened to him. All of my non-California schools, I rescinded my apps, or I didn't finish my auditions, or didn't go through with it. And that left me UCLA, UC San Diego, and Cal State Fullerton. My pool dwindled because I think I applied to 12 or 15 schools and they were mostly out of California. UC San Diego accepted me, and that was the furthest I could go, and I took that. That freshman year, first quarter, was a real revelation to me of there are out gay people who don't think it's a sin, who aren't fighting it, who are just living, and that's one facet of their identity. My mom and I were fighting on the phone about this, and she was supposed to come see me in a play the next day, and she said she wasn't going to come, and we fought about my sexuality. And then she still came. She brought flowers. She schmoozed with everyone as if nothing was wrong. And then we got to my dorm, which was a shared floor with, I think, 9 other guys, and I shared my room. And I think all the guys were home, and my mom and I had a screaming match about sexuality. And she'd brought a Bible that she'd put post-its in for every sin I was committing, or that she thought I was committing or had committed, in from our phone call to anything about sexuality in there. And she disowned me. And that was freshman year, first quarter. And I think my roommates were, none of them were gay, but they were all very nice to me. And I think they told the RA, and they said that I should go to the financial aid office. And I went to the financial aid office, and they just had paperwork for it of what it meant to be a disowned gay kid. And part of what they did was they mandated therapy. And so that's when I first went to science-based therapy, not religion-based. And my mom wouldn't sign the papers that said she had officially disowned me. So I couldn't get financial aid as much as I needed, so I just had to keep working. And I think that summer, especially between freshman and sophomore year, I lived out of my car, which my cousin had given me, and I would sleep on people's floors and couches. I literally couch surfed that summer until summer school started. And then I broke into dorms, and one of my future roommates from my second year was doing summer school. So he let me live in his dorm room that summer. And so I just lived on campus and lived out of my car. Those were probably some of the hardest times of my life. I mean, I was literally unhoused. I couldn't afford rent, but I couldn't qualify for all these other things. I would have been 17 at that time. And so unless your parent says they've disowned you or you've been officially emancipated, you can't qualify for all these other sorts of aid. Around that time, I still have, but then I really was mixed in my relationship to faith and God. And was I being provided for, or was it independent spirit and will? And I go back and forth, and I sort of live in a question mark now. But I do think my mom equipped me with stubbornness, with resilience, with wisdom and survival instincts that made her such a ferocious single mother and immigrant, battling sexism and infidelity and mockery in the community and such. So I know I had those tools in me from the same person that would disown me. That same stubbornness, delusion has kept me going all this time, really, and is what makes me a survivor. I want to say that my journey to acting started because of a Korean megachurch. And my mom had heard the story of a pastor who was speaking in front of a larger congregation than he was used to, and he got stage fright. And so she wanted to make sure that whatever I pursued in my adulthood, I would never have stage fright. Perhaps her wish was a lawyer in a courtroom, or a doctor, or a professor, or a pastor. But instead, She introduced me to the church theater troupe that had this intrepid director who created original pieces for Christmas and Easter. And I joined that, and she never thought I would stick with it. That was around 5th grade. And when I went to high school, I didn't know I could take theater classes. I did sports for 2 years, and she, again, in her single mother ways, wanted me to quit sports so I could study my SATs more in that after school program. So instead I joined choir, and choir asked me to audition for the musical theater show that fall. So then all my sports time in the after school turned into theater time. And that was junior year. And I just knew I love this. I love theater. I love performing in front of people. I love transforming into characters. I love rehearsal. I love ensemble. I love that. I mean, I was desperately craving family and community, and that happened so instantaneously in theater, especially. UC San Diego, I was a theater major, a declared major from the start. And so I just devoured as many classes as I could and took everything I could. And in that first quarter, I auditioned for and got into the grad productions. And so I was a very lucky freshman where people said you had to pay your dues or work your way up into being in the undergrad shows, let alone the grad shows. And instead, I was in a show every quarter starting from my freshman first quarter. My senior year of UC San Diego, I worked with La Jolla Playhouse as an actor finally, and they gave me my equity card. And once you have your equity card, it limits what cities you can live in, or at that time it did. And so I thought, it's either LA or New York. I hated growing up in LA. I hated how poor we were and how many break-ins we had and our car getting robbed and all the dad drama. And so I moved to New York without ever having considered any options. And then I moved the day before my mom's birthday, August 26th, 2009. And I've been here, it'll be 15 years next month. The guy who gave me my first show, that first quarter in UC San Diego, the grad production, that was a director named Jerry Ruiz. And he was doing a show at El Repertorio Español, the Spanish Repertory Theater. He gave me my first job there. So that was my first off-Broadway job. And my first TV film gig was because I spoke Korean. So I have my mom to credit for that. It was a TV movie called Too Big to Fail about the '08 crisis. At one point, they wanted to borrow money from South Korea. And so I played a translator to that mini plot line. That was my first TV gig. And I just kept pounding the pavement and doing off and off-Broadway shows. In December of 2014, I'd auditioned for Billions. In January of 2015, we would film the pilot. In June, we would film the rest of the season onwards. And they just kept bringing me back. Between season 1 and 2, I was still waiting tables and slowly getting recognized more from the show. And then the restaurant would let me have a floater schedule and I could pick up shifts when I wanted. And in season 2, around the holidays, I thought, well, it's holiday time. I need extra money for presents or whatever. And I went to try to pick up a shift, and the app said I was no longer an employee there. So I lost my safety net, and I just had to hope that the TV thing would work out or the arts thing would work out. And it did. So after 7 years of waiting tables and bartending and catering and personal assisting, I haven't had to have a parallel or a survival career since then. It's nice to reflect on the fact that my first TV film job was because I spoke Korean. And so to come from a place where I was at times growing up ashamed of it or made fun of for it, I never wanted to sound like a fob, or I didn't want to have the wrong vowel sounds. And yet now I see how I've gotten work because of it. Not good enough to get pachinko, but still it has opened doors for me. And to go from shame or wanting to hide that aspect of my identity to being so proud of it and proud of the community and the advances the community has made, at least in recognition and both self-acceptance and pride and the offerings from our motherland to our Korean American brethren. That's so exciting to see in my lifetime, and how much more there is to come from there. My name is Daniel K. Isaac, and this is my Korean American story.